Haircut last weekend, honestly. Getting all scraggly. Hey folks, it is November the 13th, and we're going over chapter 76, 77, which has to do with the rise of nation states and absolute monarchs. So we're going to start with a little bit of an overview of why feudalism is going to fall in the face of this, and also a little bit more on William the Conqueror and how he kind of represents the central power type of monarch that we're going to talk about, at least for England. So the terms we have on the board are, first, we have a question over how were post-feudal kings strengthened? How did William stop rebellion? The Doomsday Book and the Salisbury Oath. So that's pretty much that. So let me show you the images first.
Stuck it on here.
That sounds quite fashionable.
They just went, here, things were kids.
Well, here's the thing, too. See, this is from a painter in a later period who obviously had some training. And this is actually from his time. So you see here, it's like something somebody would like doodle in like a third grade classroom. And here you have something, it's like somebody at least with some training, right? Yeah. Well, now some people, like art historians, ladies. So some like art historians will tell you that there's actually a lot of significance to medieval art as far as like the symbology. So like the thing is about medieval artwork, and you'll find this in medieval church artwork, everything you see has a symbolic meaning. A lot of it is hidden to modern interpretation, such as like every animal has its own message for the person viewing it. What people are wearing, how they're standing, how they're holding their hands. One easy one is you'll notice in medieval art, it's a lot like ancient Egyptian art, and that kings are very large, right? They're like giants, whereas normal people and peasants are like little midgets and children. That's how it was in ancient Egypt as well. It's like a standard human way to kind of portray greatness, you know. So it's yeah.
You big. If you small.
So as you've read, one of the things he's going to do is he's going to make a prison for his enemies. Prisons were not for common people back in the Middle Ages. They were there for nobles, either nobles who were being ransomed or who were being charged with a certain crime. And so one thing William would do as a conqueror, he wanted to solidify England under him. And one of the ways to do so is if somebody rebelled against him, he'd put them in the Tower of London. And this is going to be put to use for a very long time. Of course, back then, this is like it now. Here's an artist picture of it later on in about probably 1600s. So it's obviously gone through renovations, but it would be the place where you would have people who were deemed illegitimate heirs of the throne, nobility who fell in ill favor with the monarchs, stuff like that. I think now it's a museum, so that's cool. Here's the Doomsday Book. So this is literally, it's just a census, right? There hasn't been a census like this since the days of Charlemagne. And it counted everything, like how much livestock you owned, how much land, what your wealth was, because all these things were taxable. And if the king knew what was taxable, he was able to plan out how much money he had and what the things he could do. He's going to build a lot of French-styled stone castles all throughout England in order to prevent rebellions. And he's essentially going to make England into the England we think of during the Middle Ages, really. It's going to be less of a bunch of feudal lords and stuff like that, Robert, that are spending all their time fighting one another, and more into a unified people for a little while. But don't worry, English people love themselves some civil wars. So another thing he's going to do to unify the people is he's going to have nobles take a pledge of loyalty to his crown. Yes. And well, it wasn't at Stonehenge, but Stonehenge is at the Salisbury Plain. And so they go to this place, into a church that's near here. and they're going to take the Salisbury oath. They're going to do it, of course, in typical medieval fashion over holy relics. And so folks would swear upon their souls that they would not betray the king and serve him in times of war and things like that. So he's trying to cut off a lot of the problems that we've seen in feudalism. And it's going to be pretty helpful. He's going to have a rather peaceful reign. People aren't going to have any successful rebellions against him. I think he will have some trouble from the Welsh, but they were an independent people for a very long time anyways. I don't quite recall him in Ireland either, or Scotland, but it's all right. I got bad memory. So on that note, let's go ahead and get our notes for the day. And so the first one, how were post-feudal kings strengthened? So that has to do with chapter 76. So I want to hear from Alondra. So, oh yeah, I see you're looking at something right there. So in chapter 76, Alondra, you'll remember there were some problems with feudalism, but the kings are going to start getting some things that are going to help them be more kingly. What was that?
Wait, things that made them more kingly?
Yeah, like powerful.
I don't know, but there's a lot of gold in this thing, so I'm assuming this is what it is. It's like they form permanent armies or something.
Yes. So kings could afford something we call, and this is something the founding fathers of America warned against because it's the sign of powerful monarchs, and that is called standing armies. So they're there all the time, even during times of peace. Traditionally, you only had an army during times of war. America would basically be like that until pretty much World War II. Ever since World War II, we've always had a big standing army. So now we would have some soldiers there for border skirmishes and Indian fighting and protecting like the mail and stuff like that, but not that many guys. All right, so could afford standing armies. So thank you, Alondra. It's very helpful. Hey, Colin, what's another thing that kings got to help with their kingliness?
Isn't it the revenue system?
Yep, taxes. Yeah, what they start doing is they start asking for taxes in money. Because in the late medieval ages, they start getting things like knights with expensive armor. But they start training up common soldiers to use things like bows, which take a lot of training and money. Eventually crossbows, which are going to be awesome because you can basically train any dummy to shoot it and it can pierce armor. And then you get cannons, guns. That's super expensive and it takes more training. So it takes a lot of cash. Now, there's kind of one more thing. So the kings get big armies. They're getting the tax money instead of just getting a little bit of wheat or volunteer soldiers every now and again. What's one more thing, somebody? What's the last thing? Yes. So they are in charge of justice. So they start making laws that say things are unfair the way that the nobles are treating these people compared to these people. So everybody must come to the king, to the king's court if it's something that has to do with like murder, or if you're suing somebody, the king will have his own judges. So you start seeing judges come up appointed by the king instead of just having the nobles act as their own judges over their poor little serfs. So that's going to be a big deal. This is going to make the monarchs more and more powerful. People need nobles less when they're getting their protection from the king, when they're going to the king's courts, and when their taxes are going to the king. The nobles are starting to become more and more insignificant. But don't worry, they're gonna be around for a lot longer. Cool. All right. Now, how did William the Conqueror prevent rebels like nobles from cropping up? Prisons is one. What's the other one? Zoe?
He would like go to their where they lived and like the Lord would go against him. He would like go to like their little villain thing they have and like squash them.
Yes, he imprisoned rebels and personally put down lords who disagreed, essentially. And as a bonus, he took their wealth. So I mean, that's what he did. And he would add this to the power of the crown and be like, "Hey, you're a rebel, so I'm going to go first. I'm going to go crush you with my giant army. And then second, I'm going to put you in prison. And then third, all that you own is now mine." Haha. So that's one way to take power, I suppose. It seemed to work for him. Nice. So, so he's going around. He's making sure that there's one government. You can't have multiple governments going against one another in this kind of system. So he's like, hey, you can only serve one master. That's going to be me, King William the Conqueror. And so moving on from there, he's going to have a doomsday book made. So what was that about, Kelby? What was the doomsday book? No, it was supposed to be. It was supposed to last until the end of the world. But why did he make it? What was in it? Trust me, it's not an interesting thing to read. Yeah, it was a survey as a census. Had a census made of England. And that sounds kind of silly. You're like, okay, so what? So you counted the people and the sheep in the country. It might sound trivial, but this is something that successful nations do. The Ottomans were doing this routinely. The ancient Romans would do this all the time. You can't rule a kingdom if you don't even know what's in the kingdom. You got no information.
You're basically just a face of it.
Yeah, you're making orders, but you don't even know what the orders are about, really. I mean, you could say, well, there's too much of this and this, so I'm going to regulate it. But what if you're wrong? What if there's not too much of that? So it could be a massive problem. So in all of his wisdom, he tried to remedy that. All right, last one for the day. So what was the Salisbury Oath?
This Lord is paying allegiance to the king, so like, yeah, I'm not gonna rebel.
Yes. William had the English lords take an oath. Remember, that's a religious promise. It's like it's supposed to be bigger than a normal promise. A normal promise, you're like, well, if I break it, I'll get in trouble. An oath, you're like, well, if I break it, I'll burn in hell for all eternity. So that's a little different. So take an oath to obey the king. Not obey. Okay. Yes, there you go. Man, y'all's notes are always smaller than ninth grade notes. But so yeah, that's that. So we're gonna talk more about powerful monarchs as we come back. And it's gonna be under this age of these powerful monarchs that we're gonna see
The Renaissance is going to go completely other direction in Italy. And then we're going to have the Protestant Reformation. And then we're going to have the age of the Enlightenment, and then we'll be done with the book. All right, kids. Yeah. All right. So that's going to end with our lecture today, and we will come back and talk about 78 and 79 next time. See you later.
I can tell.